All right, we're on.
All
We
right.
are recording. All right. Welcome to a very special episode. Is that how we should say it?
Different.
Different?
It's different.
Different episode? Yeah, that's fine because unfortunately, we couldn't release a regular episode this week because Eloise unfortunately contracted COVID and
How dare
is,
she?
I know, it's all her fault. And she's unfortunately having a bit of a tough time with it. I think from her update, she's on the mend, but is still not 100%.
Mm.
So we wish her all the best. But that means that Julian and I get to come on here and we're going to talk about horror movies today.
Yeah.
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 Now, if anyone doesn't know, we are both big fans of horror movies.
Love them. Love them
Yep.
very much.
They
Even the bad
are,
ones,
I was
most of them.
about to say, they are both, it's a weird thing. They're either good or I don't know, there's a spectrum, isn't there? They're either really good, really bad, and everything in between.
Mm. And has the wonderful side note of often being so bad that they're good.
Yes. What's your example that comes to mind when you think of a
Oh,
so bad?
Maximum Overdrive.
Maximum
Definitely
Overdrive.
Maximum Overdrive. It is a terrible film. It's very badly made. The acting is horrible, but in such a way that you just love every single minute of it.
And Stephen King getting called an asshole by an ATM.
Directed the movie himself, actually.
Hmm, never
Yeah.
again.
No, well, when they asked him once, would he ever direct another film, he said, "Have you actually seen Maximum Overdrive?"
And that shuts him
That's
up.
his answer. That
That's
shuts
it.
them up.
Yeah.
Having said that, I doubt he really remembers much of the process himself at the time,
It
as he
was,
freely admits to being very high during the making of it.
and that from what you've described to me, the movie that kind of comes across.
Mm.
Hmm,
But it does have Emilio Estevez and a truck with a green demon face as its hood ornament. So,
perfect. How could you hate it?
mm,
Did he direct? He didn't direct that Shining TV movie. Did he write
no,
it?
he wrote it.
He
Yeah.
wrote it, but didn't direct it.
Mick Garris, I believe, directed it, who's done a fair bit of his mini-series. Yeah, I think he did the Stand, the one from the '90s with Rob Lowe and Gary Sinise
Ah,
as well.
I hear that one's really good.
As good as a network TV film can be on a Stephen King novel. Yeah.
Yeah, I got I think two episodes into that new series with um who's in it? Whoopi Goldberg and James Marsden.
Yes.
Yeah, I got two episodes in and just couldn't keep going.
No. I understand they wanted to try something different, but anyone who's read the book knows that the tension is built chronologically, not the way they put it together.
Yeah,
And anyone who hasn't read the book would be incredibly confused as to what's even happening. So it didn't work.
no. But we're not here today to talk about Stephen King.
No,
Actually,
although I could
we could
happily.
we could do a whole we should actually do a whole episode on Stephen King adaptations.
Oh, I could talk for hours on that.
We'll make it a series. I
Hmm.
think part of that will be how Mike Flanagan finally seemed to get it right a lot of the time.
He did, but I think that's because Mike Flanagan has an ability to focus on the human side of the stories in anything that he does.
Mm.
He humanizes everyone, and Stephen King's stories are first and foremost about people, not
Yes,
horror. So,
it's the horror happening to people, not
mm,
um, the horror's not really the central part of it. It's more about the characters and the relationships, isn't it? For King.
yeah, and this horror is unfolding around them, and I
Yes.
think Mike Flanagan gets that. That comes across in a lot of his films, not just his Stephen King
Mm.
novels.
He did Doctor
Mm.
Sleep, didn't he?
He did, which should have been unfilmable. Like
Mm.
he should not have managed to pull that off, and yet he managed to make a sequel to a film and a book.
I really
So,
enjoyed that movie.
very good movie.
Yes. Anyway, we're off topic again. We could go on for hours.
We're good.
We are here to talk today about movies that a couple of movies in the same series that oh very vary in quality and very it is tangentially related to books. So
Yep.
I guess the title and description of the episode that I will write will spoil it. But we're here today to talk about the two Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey movies.
Yes.
The
Uh,
fact that these movies exist in the first place is insane. And the fact that they are now going on to make a cinematic universe based on them is also absolutely insane.
colloquially entitled the Pooniverse.
Pooniverse, I am there for it. I love
So for
it. Love it.
those for those of you who don't know, Winnie the Pooh came into the public domain. I think it was at the end of 2022 or the start of 2023, and very, very, very quickly, this British production company went into action and made a Winnie the Pooh horror film called Winnie the Pooh: Blood and Honey.
Now, I think if I'm remembering correctly, they actually started production before it came into public domain
I believe so. Yes.
because it you can make it as long as you don't release it.
Yes. Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, they timed it perfectly that the movie was, I think, officially announced just as it came into public domain, and they were pretty much already completed production by then.
Yeah, they released a few stills at the time
Yes.
surrounding one of the kills, which we'll get into later.
Yep. And
Yeah,
and then shockingly, it got a sequel that released earlier this year, which I think is just called Blood and Honey 2.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm
Now I have to assume that the sequel was greenlit as part of a two or three picture deal and not on the back of the strength of the first movie.
okay, from what I read, the first movie was such a low budget. I think it made about $5 million at the box office, and that was enough to make it a huge success, thus justifying a sequel.
Right.
That's
Well,
what that's
okay.
what I think I read somewhere. I might be wrong. If anyone out there knows, feel free to correct us.
Yep,
Um, so I guess I think we both are in agreement of the first one. The second one we haven't really had a long discussions about yet because you only just watched it this week.
that's right. Yep.
I think I saw it a couple of weeks ago. But we'll get to the sequel. Let's talk about the first one.
We should preface this, by the way, by
Absolutely,
saying,
yes.
first of all, this is going to be quite an adults only episode. We're going to go into quite a lot of detail about what happens, and it's going
Yep,
to be spoilerific as well. So if you haven't
absolutely.
seen it and you don't want to know how it ends, you might want to turn off now. Otherwise, enjoy the ride.
It's gonna be a ride. I will preface this also by saying you are going to, if you are interested in watching these movies before hearing us talk about them and are interested in quality filmmaking, these are not the movies for you.
No,
But if that's interesting, just skip to the second one. Don't put yourself through the torture of the first one.
I do think you could probably do that without too much issue.
Absolutely. We'll get
Mm.
into that when we talk about the
Mm.
sequel. So
Yeah,
yeah, there's going to be a lot of adult talk, a lot of adult themes, and spoilers from this point onwards.
you've been warned.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to give my very quick review of the first one.
Hmm.
It was absolutely terrible. Not, I can't think of one redeeming feature about it.
Hmm. Well, I agree with you about 99%.
Okay.
That it's just awful.
It is,
But maybe there's two redeeming features, and those were two of the kills that we can talk about that I
all right.
found to be at least on par with a standard 80s
Yep.
horror film.
Yep. Okay. So we should clarify when we're talking about a slasher flick, what are the standard tropes that you're looking for that makes it good in your mind?
Well, first of all, there needs to be, I feel, some, I don't want to say backstory because Michael Myers never had a backstory. But there needs to be something to the killer that's driving them, whether they are a pure evil, product or something like that. So there needs to be, I guess, purpose to the kill. And I think that's one of the things that really did spoil the Halloween series as it went on. A lot of particularly unnecessary kills. Uh, so a slasher film has to have a killer who's dedicated to what they're doing, obviously.
They love if
And
you find what you love, you don't work a day in your life.
that's right. That's exactly right. So there has to have that. We have to have, you know, people getting taken out in, I think, creative ways at times.
Yep,
But I think the kills also have to be earned as well, and the jump
absolutely.
scares have to be earned. But there has to be jump scares.
Yeah.
And the final showdown, I think, is something that we've got to build towards as well, not just all of a sudden, here's the end of the film.
Mm.
Now they're attacking each other, like a certain Halloween sequel released a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we could also do whole episodes on that. It's a
I just
quadrilogy now if you take them all in. Anyway,
I prefer to think of the Halloween kills and Halloween ends as just not occurring.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I agree. And I think memorable kills,
Mm.
they need to be something special. Like I know they're probably not in the slasher genre, but I always think of the Final Destination films.
Mm.
You watch those movies because you want to know what kind of crazy Rube Goldberg machines are going to be made that will end in a death.
Yeah,
That's the fun of it. And part of the fun, and I will use the word fun, part of the fun of a slasher movie is those creative kills.
yeah. How's he going to knock this one off?
Yeah, exactly. If it's just someone being stabbed with a knife 15 times in the movie, it gets dull pretty quickly.
Yeah, unless the build up to that stabbing is interesting.
Yes. I will
Yeah.
always think of, and I know in the horror community it's very well renowned now, but Jason X. You've got a lot of great kills in that one, like the liquid nitrogen face smash.
Absolutely. Mm.
You've got the beating up the two campers in their sleeping bags.
Yeah.
You've got that kill. Like you've got to you've got to walk out of that movie going, that was a good kill. Even if the movie sucked, you've got a few little things there.
I also think you have to walk into certain movies, particularly within the slasher genre,
Mm,
aware of what you're walking into.
yeah.
No one walks into Jason. Well, if you are walking into Jason X looking for a serious development of character and plot devices and Academy Award winning acting, you're in the wrong movie.
Mm,
Most slashers aren't made that way. I know there are a few that are quite, what would you call them, elevated, avant garde. Candyman
yes.
springs to mind.
Yep. Candyman.
Um, I don't want to put Get Out in that one. I think that's more of a psychological
Yeah, I wouldn't put Get Out as a
style.
slasher.
Um, they do exist. Possibly Hellraiser, probably not when it was released, but I think now is considered a bit
Yep.
more elevated.
Yep.
But you don't go into the 10th Friday the 13th movie expecting brilliance. And I didn't go into Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey expecting brilliance. And I wasn't, no, actually, I was still somehow disappointed.
I know. I was like, so, okay, let's talk about what were the two kills. I think you said there were two kills that you enjoyed in that
Two
first
kills
one.
that I enjoyed. Yeah, I really did like the head smashing with the car.
Yep. Yep.
When one of the characters gets their head run over by the car and it explodes. I think X
Yep.
did that better.
Yes, absolutely.
Um, but I thought that was a good kill. But I think I remember messaging you at the time and you saying it's hard to mess that sort of a kill up.
Yeah.
Um, and the sledgehammer in the pool.
Yes,
I think it was Piglet. I think
it was
beat someone
Piglet.
to death with a sledgehammer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was good. I mean, but it does it say something about the film that the two kills that are memorable are really very standard for this type of movie?
I think that shows you just how bad the film is, where a kill you would expect is routine in a Friday the 13th or a Halloween or
Yeah.
a dozen of the knockoffs are the standouts in this
Yes,
film. Yeah.
because really those kills are like when you're going through a slasher movie, you start off with the basic kills and they escalate through the movie. They get
Of
more and
course.
more creative. But the fact that the two that are memorable would normally be right at the start of the film are more towards the later half of the film.
Mm,
There was nowhere for them to go.
that's right. And I think that's one of the things I really liked about something like the movie X,
Mm.
which again I would classify as a slasher film.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
I don't think Pearl is
No,
really,
I wouldn't class Pearl as a slasher. That's much more of a
but
psychological
yeah.
thriller, even.
But in X, a lot of the kills, there's no one kill I think that's the same as the other
No,
either.
that's very true.
Um, yeah. So, like going back, I think that slasher has to have that. Although when you look at Terrifier, the original Terrifier film,
Hmm.
no storyline, definitely a slasher.
Oh yeah,
No storyline to it either, but it was effective because it didn't try to have a storyline. It didn't try to
yeah.
elevate itself above that, I
That
think.
that movie, the first Terrifier anyway, knew what it was and went in and just tried to do it successfully.
Mm,
And I think Winnie the Pooh missed that opportunity because I think it tried to take itself way too seriously.
agreed.
It tried to
And
be a serious slasher horror film when you look at the source material, I was expecting something a bit more tongue in cheek.
yes. Yeah. And you can absolutely be that elevated slasher. Like I said, I think Candyman is a great, the original 1992
Mm.
Candyman, I think is a wonderful example of that elevated, serious horror film because none of the kills, I suppose the best way to put it is none of the kills are taken for granted. They're all earned.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, something like a Winnie the Pooh, given the source material, it could have been a great tongue-in-cheek, we know what we've got here kind of a film, but
The
instead it tried to elevate itself.
yes, and the fact that no one was drowned in a vat of honey,
Missed opportunity.
absolutely missed opportunity. That should have been first on the list.
Mm, mm.
Ugh.
So, look, for those who don't know, a quick rundown of the film is you've got a young Christopher Robin who grows up with these woodland creatures, I guess you would call them. And as he ages, he begins to remove himself from them and goes off to lead a normal life. And they, what would you say? They turn feral?
They do,
Would they?
yeah.
Hmm.
Yep, they,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. And he comes back as a young adult, and all hell breaks loose. And at the same time, a group of not teenage girls, I guess, they're
Early
early
20s,
20s,
yeah,
are staying in a creepy cabin in the woods, of course.
of course.
When all hell breaks loose, Winnie the Pooh and his band decide to murder these girls.
Which his band just consists of himself and Piglet.
Yes. In this movie, there is only him and Piglet. I think Eeyore makes a brief appearance.
You see Eeyore's grave
Right.
because as they went feral and starved, they killed and ate Eeyore.
It just feels like they're picking on the poor
Mm,
depressed kid in the group. Anyway,
yeah,
um, so to preface that, it's because none of the other characters were out of copyright when this film was
mm,
released. They do make an appearance in the sequel,
absolutely.
though. Hmm.
Um, yeah, that kind of just sums it up. So
Yeah,
it's just a case of wrong place, wrong time for this group of women,
it
which
does
is
feel
a,
that way.
yeah, which is also a very standard horror trope.
Hmm.
I think the
Yeah,
original Friday the 13th was that they just came to Camp Crystal Lake. They didn't do anything wrong. They just happened to be a psychotic murderer there at the same time.
yes, who had a grudge against camp counselors because of what happened to her son.
Exact spoilers for what a 40 something year old
40
movie
year old
now.
movie. Yeah, yeah,
Yep. Kevin Bacon was in it though. Everyone's
he
shocked when they
wasn't it.
first watched that and they're like, "Oh, Kevin Bacon."
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, he quite the
Yep.
death scene in that film too.
That was a memorable one.
Hmm.
When we're talking about memorable death scenes, that's a good one.
That's up there.
Oh
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, which is yeah, so it's a very standard horror trope of just wrong place, wrong time.
Yes. Um, and building on that, look, one of the things I think that also makes this bad is that none of the actors in this movie are good.
No.
Um, Which again, it's a horror film. It's a slasher horror film, so the bar's not real high on acting quality.
Yeah.
But they do limbo under it quite successfully.
Mm.
Um,
It's almost like they were
and
purposefully trying to be bad in some way.
maybe, uh, and aside from Christopher Robin, who I only know the name of because it's Christopher Robin,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you the name of any other human character in that film.
At one point, I thought the main character was killed. And then it turned out it wasn't the main character, it was someone else. And I think that just goes to show I had no idea who we were supposed to be rooting for in this or who the main character even was.
No, I couldn't tell you even now.
No.
Because again, spoilers, everyone dies except for Christopher Robin, who's
Yeah.
only in the film for, I think, 5 minutes tops,
Yep.
at the start and then again at the end. So, I mean, are we meant to be rooting for him? If so, I don't really care because who is he?
Yeah.
Are we rooting for Winnie the Pooh for being abandoned by his best friend?
Yeah,
Maybe.
you could almost root for Winnie the Pooh if you saw it that way.
Yeah.
Now, in all those actors' defense, there's nothing against them because I think with this low budget movie, you just take what you can get.
It's paid work.
It's paid work. I don't think their casting process was probably extremely long.
I imagine it was probably a lot of friends.
Yep, which we've back in our uni days, we all cast friends in roles because
Because no one else wanted to be in.
exactly right. You're like, hey, you be in this, and next time you need something, I'll be in yours.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no shade on the actors. And to be fair, the quality of the stuff they were given as well probably isn't up to a high standard.
No, well, even the best actors in the world can't make a film great if the writing and directing is terrible.
Yeah.
Um, Liam Neeson in The Haunting comes to mind, which was a
Mm.
remake of The Haunting of Hill House. Horrible film, just terrible. Memorable, I think, for one kill involving Owen Wilson. But even he couldn't save that movie. Um, Hayden Christensen with the Star Wars prequels also comes to mind as well.
Yeah,
In and
because
of himself, is a great actor.
he has had some great performances.
Yeah, and I think he proved how good he can be as Anakin when he came back in Obi-Wan, which I know is controversial in and of itself, but I think he did a lot better with the material then.
Absolutely. Yeah, but when you're given lines like "sand, I hate sand," which has been
Yeah,
memed into
well.
oblivion now, but
And to be fair, he has a point.
yeah, sand is horrible.
I do love the beach, but the sand, if it could just stay there, would be
Yes,
much better.
exactly right. Yeah, so I
Mm.
think we've got. I think a lot of the symptoms of this movie, it was probably very rushed and suffers from just a very low budget.
Yes, I would agree, but I think it made a fatal flaw that a number of horror movies, particularly in the slasher genre, tend to make in that they expect the kills to guide the movie and to carry the movie. Um, and you can't do that. Even a slasher film has to have some kind of linear story progression,
Yeah,
or characters you at least care about because you don't
yeah.
want them to die.
Yeah, I was just
Um,
about to say we didn't care about the characters, so when they died, it was a bit, oh, okay, cool.
yeah,
Yeah, who cares?
and and I get some of the kills were designed in such a way, like the hot tub kill.
Mm,
She wasn't killed in the hot tub, but they set it up to kill her in the hot tub,
yeah,
I think. And for me, it's like I get what you're trying to do if that's indeed what you're trying to do and subvert things a little bit, but you didn't. You just made it convoluted,
mm,
and it just didn't have a lot of weight in the end. That was the kill, by the way, that wound up being the head run over by the car.
yeah,
Um, but it took a lot to get to that moment.
yeah. It
Yeah.
wasn't like you said, it wasn't an earned kill. And
No,
there's so many creative ways you can off someone in a hot tub.
Yeah, absolutely.
But why
Absolutely.
why did they have to move from the hot tub to the driveway?
Yeah, it wasn't, and I get there are films that can do that brilliantly. And I'm struggling actually to think of one off the top of my head, but that almost torturous, I guess Terrifier did it a fair bit,
Yep.
in an over the top way.
Mm.
Saw, I guess, played on it a little bit,
Yep.
of having that just dread build up from the initial appearance of the killer to the victim and
The
them
one,
trying to fight.
if we're using the Saw example, the one I always remember is Saw 2 with the pit of needles.
Mm,
The thought of that is already terrifying enough, and then when someone's thrown into it, like you're sitting in your seat, you feel those needles go in yourself.
mm. And I think Hellraiser does it as well at times when you expect them to cut away or the kill to happen, and it doesn't. They just draw out the agony of the victim. And there are films that can do it well. And I think that's what maybe they were attempting to do, but there was kind of just so long between her being in the hot tub and Pooh first appearing and then her head
Mm.
getting run over with the car. And because there was no visible story in between that, you just get bored.
And we
Like,
didn't,
well,
and that character's whole personality was essentially, I'm in a hot tub taking photos for Instagram.
yes, which was another big flaw with this film, by the way. And I think,
Oh,
Brayden, we need to discuss.
we're gonna get to, I think, the worst sin this movie has.
Hmm, yeah.
We are about to talk about more adult themes here,
Yeah, it's not violent themes
not
either.
violent themes.
The sexy side of
This,
the slasher film.
yes, which it is absolutely a trope in slasher films that at some point
Absolutely.
a woman will get topless
Yes.
at
Yes.
some point.
At
I
some
think
point they will.
Scream sums it up the best because Scream is such a meta commentary on the slasher genre.
Mm,
They say that if you, who is it? Stu that says it in the first one. He's going through no
no,
Jamie
Randy.
Kennedy's
Randy says
character.
this. Yeah, Randy. He
Randy,
says
yes,
it.
thank you. Yeah, if you have sex in a slasher film, you are going to die.
Absolutely. So usually when a girl, woman, female character gets
Yep.
topless, it's for this express purpose of them having sex with one of the male characters. And usually within the next 5 to 10 minutes, both those characters are dead. Which, of course, for those of you who know, spoilers for a 30-year-old film, Scream then subverts that by making the two people who had sex, one of them lives and the other one is actually, in fact, the killer. So
Oh God,
subverts that quite well.
is Scream 30 years old?
96. So
Oh
yeah,
my
well,
God.
28. Mm,
Oh my God, no.
mm.
Scream holds up, by the way.
It does. It absolutely does. If you want to go and watch what a brilliant slasher film was like from when I was a teenager, go and watch Scream.
Yeah. And the sequel, Scream 2. Scream 3,
I don't think there's been a bad Scream sequel.
Scream 3 is definitely the weaker.
There are weaker ones, and Scream 3 is one of them.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's ever really been a bad
Mm,
come out going, that was just awful.
yeah.
Um,
But anyway,
yeah.
we could also talk about Scream.
We could. Scream is just brilliant, but so many people have
Yep.
come before us and done that.
Yes.
And so this girl, like you said, Brayton, she is the sexy one of the
Yep.
group. She's taking photos in a hot tub, and naturally you expect her at some point to take her top off, which then, of course, leads to her inevitable death because she's
Yep.
being overtly sexual.
Yep.
And if Eloise were here, I'm sure we could talk a lot about that actual idea of women being punished for their sexuality. And I'd
Yep.
love to have a great conversation with Eloise about it. I'm
There
sure she'd have a lot of thoughts on
there
that.
is absolutely a conversation there.
But for those of you who don't know, that tended to be the purpose back in the 70s and 80s when these
Yeah.
films were being created. It was a statement on saying women are often punished for being sexual creatures.
Yep.
And so the horror movie genre shows that.
Yep.
But of course she doesn't.
It's absolutely not in a supportive way of
No.
women should be conservative and cover up. No, it's a more horror movies have always been a commentary on society. They're
Mm.
saying if you are saying women deserve that because they're being that, then you're no better than the killer.
You are the killer, essentially,
Yes,
if you agree with what's happening.
yes, it's putting it
Yeah.
in it's a very extreme. It's taking it to its extremes. But
Mm.
that's what they. So don't think we're trying to say women should cover up. Absolutely not.
No, I'm actually more in favor of less clothes for everyone, personally.
Yeah. Yes. Just wanted to
That's
clear
my
that.
motto. Yeah.
Just wanted to clear that up.
But yeah, horror movies absolutely have always been a social commentary in a way. There's always been that movement of art and imitation to life, and I think that's why Jordan Peele has become so successful recently with his horror films,
Mm.
um, because they're so relevant. Also, because they're brilliantly made.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He also seems to trust his directors a lot too,
Mm.
which is great.
Jordan Peele.
So Jordan Peele. So he doesn't direct all his horror
No,
films.
he's directed Get
He
Out,
has,
Us,
yeah,
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 Get Out, Us, and Nope. He directed those three
yeah, and he was the producer
on
of
the Candyman,
Candyman and I think a couple of others.
which was not a remake. That Candyman was not a remake. It was like a continuation.
Yeah, it was a vague sequel. They linked
Mm.
it actually really well. I thought it was really clever how they linked it back to the original film.
Yeah.
Um, but he had a lot of trust in his director for that film
Yep.
as well, and she did a very good job.
Mm.
Um, I've forgotten where we were. Oh yes,
Yeah.
the girl in the hot tub.
Girl in the hot tub.
She does not take her top off,
Nope, not at all.
not at all. In fact, only one character takes her top off, and this character and their decision for this vexed Brayton and I quite a bit.
Yes.
Yes.
It was an unearned topless scene. There
And
was
it's very rare that you'd hear us saying topless scenes are unearned,
yes, it
but it
served
was.
no purpose to the kill. There was
Nope.
no reason for it. Let me spoil the whole scene for you.
Please.
There's a garage, like a workshop, petrol station, whatever they want to call it in England. Not sure what they call it in England actually, but they had stopped there previously, and they had the trope of the creepy old guy warning them about what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's in every slasher movie anyway. One of their friends is running late and is driving to meet them later. She stops at the same petrol station, but the owner isn't there, but Winnie the Pooh is, who proceeds to murder her on, was it a buzzsaw? Table
He put her
saw?
into a wood chipper in the end, but
Whichever, something like that.
he tore her apart anyway.
Yeah, yeah. But throughout the struggle, he rips off her shirt. And
Yeah,
there's no, it just randomly happens. It was just, oh, I was literally sitting there like, oh, that just happened. Okay.
and we should clarify, this is not her running away and he lunges to grab her and oh no,
Hmm.
her shirt's come off. They're just struggling and suddenly she's topless.
Yes.
Hmm.
Completely unnecessary and unearned. My
Yep.
my headcanon there is it just accidentally happened on the day and they didn't have enough budget to do a second take.
You would think, yeah. I can't see any other reason for it being there. Like when you watch a slasher film, you expect to see topless women at some point,
Yep.
particularly if you are in that campy kind of schlock slasher genre.
Which this movie is absolutely trying to
Absolutely trying to
emulate.
be.
Yep.
So you expect to see it, but like we said, you expect to see it serve its purpose of the sexualized teens are punished for being sexual and are killed. But no, this is just, yeah, she's topless.
Yeah,
Why? We don't know. She just is.
it was not, it didn't serve the story. It didn't do anything. She could have kept the top on and it wouldn't have changed anything. I think unnecessary, didn't need it, should have been cut.
And the kill wasn't awful, I suppose. But yeah, it didn't.
Mm.
Mm.
It's sat funny with me.
I never thought that I would be one of those people saying this topless scene is unearned, but there we
Yep.
have it.
And yet,
It
I think
absolutely was.
20 minutes later, there's a woman in a hot tub that if she took her top off then, it would have been, yep, cool.
Made a lot of
That,
sense if she had it.
yep, made sense for the
Having,
character and what she was doing
yeah,
at the time.
yeah. Having said that, I suppose they don't really delve into the sexuality of all the women staying in the cabin, but
No.
it's possible because they were all heterosexual that they felt no reason for her to be. But then why would you throw in that one earlier in the film? I don't know.
It felt like they were just ticking off boxes of, okay, a slasher film has to have this, and this. And they're just ticking off boxes as they go.
Unfortunately, they forgot that a slasher film has to have tension as well.
Yes.
Mm.
And like I said, like you said before, characters you care about, they tried to do that with the quote unquote main character, where she's going through, I think it's earlier in the film, she's going through therapy because she had been stalked by someone.
Yes, that's right. I forgot all about that
Yep.
subplot.
It's barely mentioned, and it also is unfinished because she ends up getting killed at the end. So
Yeah.
a lot of when you introduce a subplot like that, a lot of the character's journey there is overcoming her fears and overcoming her trauma to heal and overcome this new challenge.
She
She doesn't
faces her attacker this time, but she
exactly.
doesn't. Yeah.
No, she doesn't do any of that.
Well, is she the one that runs over Pooh at the end?
Yes, I believe so.
But he doesn't die.
No,
He just gets up and then kills her.
yeah.
Hmm.
And Christopher Robin escapes after being useless for the whole movie.
Yeah. Yep.
So I would have felt better if Christopher Robin had been killed and she escaped. Like at least that would have felt almost a little bit like she overcame something and the character had a journey, but she died and then nothing happened.
No. And I get that they have to have their final girl, so to speak, which sometimes is a final boy.
Yep.
Anyone who's ever seen the original Evil Dead films knows that Ash is in fact the final girl of those films.
Some would say
And Bruce Campbell does it.
he's the best boy.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bruce Campbell does better than anyone.
No one can be Ash except Bruce Campbell.
No, and I hope no one ever tries to be.
It wouldn't work.
No. So maybe they were trying again to be subversive and have Christopher Robin as the final boy, but who cares?
I certainly didn't care by that point.
Like,
I was kind of just waiting for the movie to be over.
he's been absent for the last. How long is this film anyway? Let me check.
It's thankfully not a long film.
Have we got a run? It's about 90 minutes,
Yeah.
give or take. So he's absent for about 85 of those minutes after a brief appearance at the start. I'm not even sure who half the girls are who get killed in this movie.
No.
Someone gets killed at Pooh's cabin thing, whatever you want to call it, where they live, and I don't know who that was or why she was there. I just know she was part of the group.
One of them was Christopher Robin's girlfriend.
Right.
Right at the very start.
Yeah, I remember that part, but in the middle of the movie where Piglet is killed.
Yes. Yeah.
And somehow they had a gun, I think, or an axe, and they couldn't kill any. I don't know. It was just
There was a group of hunters at some point.
They came at the end to beat up Pooh, very much in the style of Halloween Kills, and had the same outcome, really.
At least with Pooh being some sort of weird, potentially supernatural creature, I can kind of understand him coming back from that.
Yeah, which is never really, again, explained in that first film.
No.
We just kind of have to accept at face value that they're mythical creatures with enhanced everything.
Yep. Well, I think overall, I think we can just summarize it by it's just a bad movie. It's not so bad it's good. It's just bad.
It is. It in no way satirizes its source material.
No.
At all. It doesn't turn its source material into fun for adults.
No, it should have been a
Um,
fun movie.
when I first heard about it, I expected,
Mm,
this will be interesting. This will be a bit, No, it's insulting in a lot of ways.
yeah.
Everything that happens in this film in terms of the slasher tropes is unearned,
Yep.
I think, um, and not thought through
Yeah.
in any
Yeah.
way.
I feel like it was a very just rushed production. They just wanted to get it out as soon as possible.
And it commits, I think, the biggest sin a horror film can commit, and it's just boring.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's what else can you say about it? It's boring. There's nothing driving the tension or the focus, or the kills aren't spectacular. We never care about the girls because there's no story to them. There's no
Yep.
character development there.
Nope.
We don't want Christopher Robin to succeed at the end because who even is this kid? We don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only people we know are Winnie the Pooh and Piglet, and only
Mm.
from that little exposition scene at the very start.
Yep.
Hmm.
So overall, what would you give it a rating out of 5?
I don't want to give it 0 because there were a couple of moments where I did chuckle and
Mm.
go, okay, that was all right.
Yeah.
So I can give it a 1, I think,
Yeah.
out of 5.
I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah. It doesn't deserve any better.
No. All right. So this is the point in the podcast where if we were sponsored by anyone, an ad would go. So anyone out there?
Hint, hint. Yeah,
But
we'll take
yeah,
money and advertise for you.
absolutely. So that's the first one. We've talked a lot about the first one.
Hmm.
The sequel, which I was shocked it got. However, it is such an improvement.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Now, I haven't talked to you much about it because I think you wanted just to save all your thoughts for this. But
Mm.
I kind of gave you a play-by-play as I was watching it a few weeks ago.
Yes.
And I think one of my first things within the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie was just, oh my God, they've recast Christopher Robin and this guy can actually act.
He could. He actually could act.
He
Yeah,
actually gave, I think, a really great performance.
Yeah, I would agree. He was very good. He's not Ian McKellen or Patrick Stewart.
No.
But then who is really?
Only them.
Yeah. But he's for a horror movie, he's good.
He's competent.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
Um,
they made me care about him. Like he had a character arc.
I felt, again, we're going to be spoilerific in this too.
Absolutely.
I genuinely felt bad for him at the start of the film because maybe we should talk a little bit. The
Yes.
second film,
I love how they frame the second movie in regards to the first.
the second film alludes to a massacre that Christopher
Yep.
Robin may or may not have been responsible for. And then the film is set as a horror movie is premiering. Is that right? Or it has just premiered?
It had come out. Essentially, in the second movie, the massacre in the first movie had taken place. And Christopher Robin was being blamed for it. Or at least being accused of being involved. Yes.
Yeah.
But the first Blood and Honey movie is actually a movie in the universe of the second one.
Yes. So the movie they're alluding to throughout the second film is the one you watched with Blood and Honey.
Yes,
number 1.
and you actually see there's a scene in the movie where the boy is watching the first movie on his TV.
Yes.
So therefore, the first movie technically, quote unquote, isn't real.
No.
It is the crappy horror movie they made based on this true story.
Yeah, think Scream with the stab movies.
Yes, that's a good example.
I think it's the fourth one that the cold opening of Scream 4, I think, is a scene from Stab.
Yes, it
Um,
is.
mm,
Yeah. Anna Paquin was in that opening sequence.
Kristen Bell
I swear, it might
was.
have been both of them.
Might have been both of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was really good because you're watching this
Hmm.
opening cold killing, you're like, whoa. And then all of a sudden you're like, no, that's actually the film within the film. Like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah. So Winnie the
Um,
Pooh, Blood and Honey 1 is a film within the film of Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2.
yeah.
And I think that is a brilliant way of them just going, you know what? That movie sucked. We know it sucked. And here we are trying to do better.
Yeah. And Christopher Robin is doctor. And so in the first film, I think he's a med student.
Yeah.
But by the start of the second film, he's graduated, he's a doctor. But because of the events of the first film,
Hmm.
he can't hold down a job because it's bad publicity for whatever
Yep.
hospital he works in.
Yep. And because Blood and Honey 1 got released in their universe, people are specifically saying they don't want him treating them.
Mm, yeah. And
And
he makes you feel bad for him.
yeah,
Yeah.
that is a relatable situation where he's been accused of something I don't think he did, but he has to suffer the repercussions for it.
Yeah, and I guess we have to assume he didn't do
Hmm.
those things because Piglet and um, Pooh and what have you are actually real in the second film. So
Yes.
I guess we have to assume he is in fact innocent of those crimes.
I assumed he was
Um,
in it. I think the implication was he was innocent
mm.
throughout, but because people don't believe him that giant anthropomorphic animals are killing people, then
No, well, it is.
he was the only one that survived, so it must have been him.
Yeah, it is a little hard to believe anthropomorphic animals are killing humans in
Yeah.
universe, I suppose, not for us as the viewer.
Yeah.
But it was a better film. It had an actual storyline.
Yep. Had
Even
characters we cared about. He had
yeah,
his friend that her name is slipping. I know we just talked about can't remember names of any of the characters in the first one. Now I can't remember his friend's name.
I want to say Lexi or Lucy or started with an L.
I have to edit out all this silence or just keep it in.
Well,
Be bold. Lexi. It was Lexi.
Lexi.
Lexi, yes.
Right. And so yeah, we cared a bit about her, although I'm not 100% sure of what her part in the film was, aside from being a potential fridging victim.
Yep.
Which she never was.
No,
She survives the film.
no, it was very good.
Yeah, which again was
But I think
that was done well, in my opinion.
yes.
Hmm.
It's hard to believe that it was the same filmmaker that made the first one that did this one.
Yeah, I guess he had time and a bit more money.
Yep.
I think I sent a message to you saying I'm fairly certain that Apple sponsored the film in some way, shape, or form. They made it very clear that every character had an iPhone.
Yep.
So I'm assuming that. But no, it had actors who could play that. It had Simon Callow.
Yeah, you messaged me. I looked him up. I'm like, oh, that guy.
Yeah, he delivers a brilliant monologue about the creation of Winnie the Pooh and Piglet and all the other animals, which we
Yes,
can talk
because
about shortly. But
yes, yep. Because they changed
um,
the origin story for the animals in this one.
and it was good. It works.
Absolutely.
Um, but Simon Callow, for those of you who don't know, is a staple of British TV and film. He's the older bloke. John plays John Hannah's boyfriend in Four Weddings and a Funeral. He's been in several different British TV shows, including one that you quite like. Was it Gallivant?
Oh, Gallivant.
Yes,
He was in
he's in a couple
Gallivant?
episodes of that.
Oh my
He's in
goodness.
The Witcher.
Oh, is he?
Various other films. Various
Wow.
other films. Could sit here and talk about Simon Callow, but he's quite a well-established British actor.
Hmm. He
I
was in
think
Shakespeare in Love.
Shakespeare in Love. I think it would be like if you're watching an American horror film and someone of the level of, say, oh, who maybe a Tim Allen shows up,
Hmm.
or a Ray Liotta pops up in a film, like when he came into the movie Wild Hogs, I think, with John Travolta. And
Yeah.
oh, Ray Liotta's in this movie. I think it's at that sort of level of, oh, a really well respected serious actor's in this film.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, like I said, he goes through the reasons as to why Pooh exists.
Yep.
Um, would you like
And
to talk us through that one, Brayton? Or
sure, it turns out that Winnie the Pooh. So in this one, so in the first one we had Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were the only kind of animal characters, I guess you could say. But in this
others are
one,
alluded to, but we never see them.
yes,
Yeah.
in this one we've got Winnie the Pooh, Piglet, Owl, and Tigger
Yes.
are all in this one. And it turns out that the first one established that they were just these strange creatures that Christopher Robin befriended. But
Mm.
no, in this one, it is revealed, or I guess retconned almost, that they were actually kidnapped children from the town that were experimented on by essentially a mad scientist
Mm.
who turned them into these human animal hybrids.
Mm.
And it's turned out, and full spoilers for anyone, if you want to watch the movie, stop this, go watch it, then come back. But it is revealed that Winnie the Pooh is actually Christopher Robin's brother who had
Yes.
been kidnapped as a child. Billy was his name.
Now, I have to ask because I immediately had this thought.
Yep.
I had to ask, is there anything in the film that actually shows us that legitimately, or is it just the fact that Christopher Robin decides that Winnie the Pooh is his brother? I don't recall if there was any actual evidence that says that Winnie the Pooh is his brother.
I think the evidence I think it's established that he knows his brother is one of them.
Mm. And so we just assume that it's Pooh.
I think we just assume that it is Pooh.
Mm.
I think that is a suspension of disbelief moment where we just have to assume that of course the main character is going to be the brother of the
Well, it
main
would have
killer.
to be, yeah. It would have to be, yeah.
Yeah.
I would have, and I suppose when he refers to Pooh as Billy,
Yes.
Pooh does acknowledge that in
Mm.
some way. Mm.
Yeah.
So we have our reasons, and some of the kills were decent. Before we really talk about any kill in particular, I
Yep.
would like to say that in this particular universe, it seems that heads are very easy to detach from bodies.
Yep. They just pop
Um,
off at the any jolt, your head just pops off.
yeah, there is one kill in particular that I'm like, I don't. A girl gets her head caught in a bear trap, and then Pooh yanks the bear
Ah,
trap back, and
I loved that one.
it's a great kill.
It's a great
It's a
kill.
great kill, but at the same time, I'm like, it wasn't even around her neck. It just her head just pops off. Like, okay, he pulls someone else's head off, which I guess he does have super strength, so to speak.
Yes.
So he can do that, but heads come off very easily in this movie, I feel.
Mm. Yeah,
Hmm.
I would agree with that. But at least they've put a lot more effort into being a bit more creative with the kills.
Yes.
I think
Um,
you text me. There was the one I think you said like, "Ah, she got beaten to death with her own arm."
yes. Pooh rips the arm off a girl and beats her to death with it and then stabs her through the mouth with it.
Yep,
Oh, I
it was,
thought that was pretty good.
that was good. Yes, they put a
Yeah.
lot more creativity into this, and I think this movie is definitely plays a lot more with the tongue-in-cheek kind of
Yes.
style as to what the first one should have been.
Yeah.
Doesn't take
Uh,
itself as seriously.
especially with that final line.
Oh, I love there were the two lines that got me were the final line, which spoilers again. We keep warning you, but I'm going to keep reminding you. Christopher Robin gets, I think it's an axe,
Mm.
and he calls out to Billy, and who is Pooh, and Pooh turns around. He's coming at him with the axe, and Pooh just lets out I think the only line Pooh says in both movies, just lets out an "oh bother" as his skull is just cleaved in two. I laughed so hard when he said that.
Of course, that is one of the things that Pooh says quite often
Yeah.
in the Fabled Child series. So,
The second one that really got me was when they find the lair and they find the place. They go into the cupboard and the cops are there and they're looking around, and one of them says, "Let's bounce," and Tigger says, "That's my line," and then
yeah,
kills them all.
yeah. Um,
He
and
said
I
it a lot
should.
more menacingly than I did. Just
And you were very excited about the appearance of Tigger. I remember getting a text from you going, "Tigger!"
Tigger was great.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but Tigger was like my favorite character in that whole movie.
He seemed to have a lot of fun at the rave.
Yes.
Mm. And I
And not,
think that was something the first film was lacking, that sense of. I know not all slasher films have to have a sense of whimsy about them.
mm,
Um, but this one, it seemed like they did have a sense of whimsy about the kills, which,
yeah.
yeah, if you're not going to be high elevated horror, you've got to have that sense of fun.
Yeah.
Mm,
Absolutely.
yeah. And the rave scene was really good. I really
Yes,
enjoyed that.
it
Yeah.
was.
And earned topless people
Thank
because they
you.
would be like that at that sort of thing.
Yes, and it also gave a great thing for Christopher Robin's character development that no one wanted him at the rave.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like,
Yeah.
he wanted to go with his friend, and they're like, "Oh, I can't remember exactly what they said, but it's like, oh, we'd prefer you not to come."
Yep.
Like,
And you
oh,
felt bad.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And of course he didn't go, and so he lived.
yeah.
Um, and I feel like they took the rave scene, particularly there is a lot of death in that scene.
It is a
Um,
massacre.
Absolute massacre, a lot of blood flying, a lot of body parts flying, a lot of screaming and flashing lights.
Yep.
And one of the, for anyone who's seen the recent Texas Chainsaw Massacre made by Netflix, it's just a terrible film in all ways, shapes, and form. But the one thing people seem to enjoy about it is that there is a party bus where people are partying, and Leatherface wanders onto the bus and just has the time of his life chainsawing everyone to death on it. And I feel like they took a lot of inspiration from that particular scene, which is the only good scene in that film, and said we can do it even better, and they did.
Mm,
It was a great see. It was fun. It was
yep.
violent.
Some great
Um,
kills.
some great kills, and all the kills were earned. I think.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, it was the perfect horror movie moment in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Hmm.
Can we talk about Al?
Let's talk about Al.
Creepy.
Surprisingly,
Yes.
yeah,
Vomits acid.
I did not see that coming.
Yep. But it seemed
Yeah.
like he was like the mastermind of the group. Because in the first, we should say, in the first one, it's clarified the animals took a vow to never speak again.
Hmm.
In this one, they talk willy nilly. They don't care.
No, in fact, it's hard to shut Al up. I
Yeah, he
think
talks. He talks a lot.
he is our window into the killer's plans and designs.
Yes.
Hmm.
And their plans and designs are essentially, we are going to get revenge on this town.
Yes, because of what they did to us as kids, I suppose.
Yes, that's what I
Um,
assumed. Once that whole storyline is revealed.
that's never said, by the way, that that's their reason, but it does feel like that's why they're doing it.
Yeah.
I think the only kills I didn't really come in line with were Christopher Robin's parents.
That I did actually feel like they should have survived.
It felt a little forced.
Yes.
Mm. And out of nowhere as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say the dishwasher death was pretty cool.
I
But
found that one a little bit hard to watch.
oh, really?
Yeah, just it's like,
That's interesting for
oh,
you.
oh. That was one of those kills where you know exactly what's going to happen,
Mm.
and it did, and they didn't turn away.
It's
They,
foreshadowed right at the start of the movie.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah, I
it
agree. It
wasn't a
did
pleasant kill.
no, and I agree. I don't think it was meant to be, but I do agree that maybe his parents should have survived
Hmm.
because it didn't.
I,
Yeah.
I'm not impugning the kill. I thought it was well done. It was well made. I personally found it an uncomfortable one to watch, just because
Mm.
of the method of death, I suppose.
And look,
Uh,
all of us have stabbed ourselves on a fork or a knife or something trying to get it out of the dishwasher.
yeah,
We know what that
yeah,
would be like.
and she cops a lot of them to the face.
Yeah. So here's your reminder to point your knives and forks down when you load them into the dishwasher.
Even though I believe technically they're meant to point up because they dry better that way.
Yeah, but there also is it definitely is a safety hazard.
It feels that way. Yeah,
Yeah.
better safe than sorry.
Yes. One thing I did you notice at the end? Oh, I should mention it at one point. Winnie the Pooh gets a flaming chainsaw.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I like that.
But the one thing I noticed is, did you notice there was smoke and sound effects, but in several scenes that chainsaw blade was not moving at all.
Yes. Yep.
Unfortunately, I understand why. It was probably a safety thing and they didn't have the budget. That really took me out of it for a second.
Yeah. Yeah. I could forgive little things like that.
Yeah.
Given the more elevated status of the film, I can forgive that.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but I
I mean,
think
if that's the little stuff that I'm really complaining about, then it did its job.
yeah, if something like that was in the first film, it would have been a case of they can't even get that right.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I was willing to overlook it just for the sheer guilty pleasure of the rave. I think I really did quite like that whole sequence.
It was really good.
Mm,
And the makeup effects in their second one, clear improvement. Because
definitely.
the first one was very clearly two guys in masks.
Yeah.
This one, I think, like animated. They must have had some animatronics in them somewhere. Like all,
Or some form of CGI, but definitely, yeah, the first one were rubber masks,
yeah,
definitely. But you could actually see fur on
mm,
Pooh's head this time.
yeah, very
Mm.
well done. I think an improvement overall in just every area, from the story to the acting to the special effects.
The
Just the
kills,
kills, just an improvement across the board.
it really was. It hits the points you want a horror movie to hit in a lot of ways.
Yes, and does them competently.
Competently. I wouldn't say
If
they're brilliant.
oh
It's not a
no,
brilliant film.
absolute no. I think I said this to you that if we are looking at it objectively, like if, for example, The Godfather is our standard, like the quote unquote perfect movie, this is
Mm.
still really down the bottom.
Yes, very much so.
But if we are comparing Winnie the Pooh 1 to Winnie the Pooh 2, there's a huge gap in quality.
Oh, absolutely. This film, the first film is just insulting to horror fans, I think, and Winnie the
Yeah.
Pooh fans. So,
Yes.
whereas I think the second film, I would put it on a level with one of your better Friday the 13th sequels.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Not, it's not Shakespeare, um, but like you said, I think we get the feeling that they know it's not Shakespeare this time,
Yeah.
so they don't try and make it more than it is.
Yeah, they definitely leaned into it.
Mm.
They leaned into that let's have fun a lot more than the
Yeah,
first one. And I think
yeah.
I think it says something about the filmmakers that they were willing to take on the criticisms of the first one and do
Mm.
and try and do better. Now I can't speak for them because maybe what they had in the second one was what they always intended, but through time, budget limits, whatever, they couldn't. So they had to pare it back. But it's almost like a redemption story,
In a lot of
almost.
ways. I think without the preface of the massacre of Hundred Acre Woods and the film coming out, if you were to remove that subplot or that backstory, I think the film could actually stand alone as
Mm,
an original horror movie, and it tells enough of the story to separate itself from the first one, but it humbly brings the first story into it and goes, well, we're going to try and make an excuse for what happened there. Sorry,
yeah,
guys.
it does remind me of, we mentioned before, the Terrifier series.
Mm,
The first one is a very standard slasher flick, elevated a lot by Art the Clown, who is a great
yes.
villain.
Yes.
And then the second one is something completely different. It's a
Mm.
wild ride.
It's very different film. Once again, I think if
Mm,
not for Art the Clown, it wouldn't be where it is.
yes.
Um,
And whoever plays Art the Clown, his name slips my mind, but I think you might have told me once, he actually has some mime or clown training.
yeah, he's a mime. I guess Italian mime style, which
Yes.
Art
So,
the Clown is very much of that
mm,
commedia dell'arte style clowning.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, without him, I think the movies very much would not be considered even cult favorites by anyone.
Yeah. But yeah,
Mm.
Terrifier 2 is completely different. Uh,
There is a lot of storyline there.
there's a lot of storyline. Some of it doesn't work as well, especially towards the end, but that's a
Mm.
conversation for another time.
Some would say too much storyline
Mm,
for what it was.
yeah, that's one of the critiques, that that movie should have been edited a little bit more.
What was it, 2.5 hours?
It's a
Thereabouts?
long movie, which is a long time to watch people be killed in various horrible ways.
Yeah, your average horror movie slasher doesn't usually go more than 90 minutes.
Yeah, 90 minutes, 100 minutes for a slasher is even pushing it.
I think Candyman might come in around the 2 hour mark.
Mm,
But there's a lot of story within that as well that never gets boring. And Tony Todd makes that film work
yeah.
as well.
So yeah, it's a case by case basis. Sometimes if you've got the story and you've got I guess the momentum to keep that going right through the script, then you're good.
Hmm.
So I was just having a look, comparing the two movies here. The first movie had a budget, since we were talking about budgets and stuff like that. The first movie only
Mhm.
had a budget of $100,000. I'm assuming US
Okay.
dollars. But it made 5.2 million at the box office.
Hmm.
So that's a very good return on investment.
Yeah,
Hence,
it
hence
is.
probably why it got a sequel. The reception, however, I know Rotten Tomatoes sometimes isn't the best metric, but it has 3% out of 100, which I would absolutely agree with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep. With an average rating of 2.2 out of 10. I absolutely would agree with too.
Yeah.
Although it did win some awards
Oh.
at the Razzies.
Oh.
It
I'm
sw-
shocked.
it swept its nominations
Oh,
for
that's so it should have.
in the 2024 Razzies. It swept the awards for worst picture, worst director, worst screenplay, worst screen couple for Pooh and
Was there
Piglet,
even a couple in that?
Pooh
Oh,
and
Pooh
Pooh
and
and Piglet,
okay.
and worst prequel, remake, ripoff, or sequel. So it
Right.
swept those awards.
Yeah.
The second one, Winnie the Pooh 2, had a budget of $500,000. So 5 times the budget, which is still very low.
Mm.
I think it actually did a lot with that budget.
Yeah, it did. Did well.
Yeah. And it made back at the box office 7.5 million.
Okay. That's decent.
Oh, absolutely. And the consensus on Rotten Tomatoes, 46% positive
Which
reviews.
for Rotten Tomatoes in terms of horror movies is pretty good.
Yep. And
Yeah.
average rating of 4.6 out of 10.
Again, it's pretty standard for a horror movie. So
Yeah, if you hit a 6 out of 10 on a horror movie, it's a masterpiece essentially.
yeah.
Yeah, horror
Um,
movies rarely get great reviews, unfortunately.
yeah. So low budget, of course, and that does excuse some of the crapulence of the first movie.
Yeah.
But for the sake of a bit of, to put things in a bit of perspective, Halloween, the original Halloween in 1978 had a budget of, I think, 150,000 or 200,000. And just that film changed the face of slasher films. The slasher genre wouldn't have been where it was in the 80s and 90s
Mm,
if not for Halloween. It introduced the tropes that we're all now familiar with. And it's just, if you've ever watched it, it really is a masterclass in building
mm.
tension within a horror film. And every kill in that movie is earned and well made.
Yep. And
Um,
what I liked about it is it's such a simple story.
yes, it is.
It doesn't
Yeah.
overcomplicate things. It's literally just a crazy guy escapes and kills people on Halloween.
Yep.
That is
Yep.
it summarized.
For whatever reason, he sets his sights on Laurie Strode, and we ignore the sequels and what have you, where she's
Mm,
his sister and all that weird cult determining stuff that the
yeah.
4, 5, and 6 went into. But it's a very simple film. It doesn't try and be more than it is, but it's just also a masterclass in build, and also how sound effects and music
Mm,
can really drive atmosphere
that
as well.
theme is iconic.
Yeah. So, we can excuse some of Blood and Honey's
Yeah. It
terribleness with the budget,
it
but
doesn't excuse bad writing.
no,
You can write something good with no budget.
it doesn't cost you any money to write something.
No. And you can I think the second one proves that I should name the filmmaker. Reese Frake Waterfield, who wrote and directed both one and two. The second one proves that he can actually write like a decent story with decent characters
Yeah.
that we care about. And I think for whatever reason, I know he kind of nailed it, at least in comparison to the first one, he nailed it with the second.
Like I said, as far as the rip and tear style of slasher film goes, it hits the right spots.
Yeah.
It's not elevated by any stretch of the imagination, but
Let's
it's not the
face it,
worst I've ever seen.
yeah, we are not going into Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey expecting elevated horror.
No.
We're
And
expecting a good time.
like also to put it out there, I've never made a horror film or a film.
Hmm.
I've never done that. So, he's doing better than me
Yes.
as well. Um, but if I'm laying down my money for it, I feel like I should be able to criticize and my time. I won't get those 90 minutes back after watching the first one.
No. To be honest, the second one I would happily watch again.
I think it's a fun movie. I think it's a kind of movie that you have a group of friends over and
Yep.
have some, decidedly unhealthy snacks.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Turn the lights off and
if
have
we
a
got
laugh.
together with a couple of our friends that also enjoy these type of movies, I would gladly sit there and put it on and watch it again. No trouble.
Absolutely. I think
First
watching it with
first one I don't want to
someone,
touch again.
no. Um, I think sitting there with someone like Adrian,
Yep.
who people will know is a long-time friend and
Yep.
emailer of the podcast, I think he would enjoy watching that in a group. I think Richie would have some more stern words to say about it. Um, which is no reflection on Richie as an elitist or anything. He and I have some great discussions about horror films that aren't always that great, but we like them anyway.
Yep.
But I'm not sure it's his cup of tea.
No, and look, it is not everyone's cup of tea.
No, and I understand that, but I think for what it's worth, Blood and Honey 2 is a decent standalone. Let's waste a bit of time in a fun way kind of movie.
Yeah. So if you've made it this far in and you want to watch one of them, just skip the first one. Maybe read the Wikipedia synopsis.
Yeah, there's nothing that I can think of in the second film that is absolutely dependent on you watching the first one to understand it.
No. Yeah, if you really want to, read the Wikipedia synopsis so you get a little bit of context for Christopher Robin's situation, and then just put the second one on. I think it's
Yeah,
well worth your time if you enjoy those type of films.
I think the only thing acknowledged in the second one from the first film is that Christopher Robin is a doctor.
Yeah, that's
But
all
I
you
think
need to
there's
know.
even exposition at the start of the second film explaining that as well. So
Yeah,
you could skip it, and no one would blame you
no,
skipping it.
absolutely.
I certainly would.
I would tell you to skip it.
Yeah. And I think again, if you've made it this far, it's so important that I once again reiterate: horror movies can be so dreadfully terrible that they're just awesome to watch and just a
Yeah,
great fun time. And I think Friday the 13th Part 4 is a great example. Or Jason Takes Manhattan is
Jason
another great
X.
example of that. Jason X, it knew
Jason
what it
X.
was. You know?
Jason X is something else.
Any of the Nightmare on Elm Street
Mm,
sequels, 2 or 4, 5, and 6, they all know what they're one and 3 are legitimately scary, great films. But 2, 4, 5, they know what they are. They're
yeah.
bad, but they're bad in a good way.
My guilty
Yeah.
my guilty pleasure movies for all that kind of stuff is the Saw franchise.
Mm.
It starts off as this semi-serious, well, the first one actually is very serious. I think you've seen the first one,
I've seen the first one, yeah.
but none of the others.
No.
Ah, okay. You're going to have to watch through them, and we're going to do another episode.
People keep telling me that. I don't know. I watched the first one. I'm like, I feel like I've done what I needed to do. But
It
then
it gets more and more ridiculous, and it just gets you to the point. Like by the time you get to like 6 and 7, you're like, how could one person have made this huge, weird contraption stuff? Not only that, but also kidnapped at least a dozen people and kept them in
mm,
here for God knows how long. It just gets utterly ridiculous. But by the end, you don't care.
yeah, I'm a bit lukewarm on the Saw franchise, possibly because it was so long for me to see the first one that I knew how it ended. I
Yeah.
knew what was coming, and so there was no great mystery there. There was no
Mm.
great reveal. So I understand that was a big deal if you
Well,
didn't realize it was going to
well,
happen.
for you or anyone that hasn't watched the Saw films, they recently did a huge turnaround with Saw 10.
Mm.
Legitimately just a good movie.
Mm.
And it got good reviews. Like I think it was
That can happen.
I think it was up in the 80s or something on Rotten Tomatoes.
Well, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
So yeah, if you want just a complete story that you could kind of end, just watch these movies and end the Saws and not watch any of the others. Saw 1, 2, 3, and 10. You can watch those and it would be a complete story and you would be happy.
Mm.
Those 4 movies tell a complete story. And then after that, if you've seen the Saw movies, that you know what happens then. But those 4, because Saw 10 is actually a prequel. It's actually set between Saw 1 and 2.
Ah,
So you could watch Saw 1, Saw 10, then Saw 2 and 3, and you would have a complete story done. And then then you could just end it there.
mm. Yeah, I understand it lost its way as it went on.
Yeah, like I said,
Um,
that some of them are pretty bad, but they're my guilty pleasure movies.
is it? So one of those things, did it really need the sequels that it got? I felt the first one was such a
It really didn't.
kind of like The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was about to.
For anyone who,
Yeah, you go.
I was going to say, for anyone who hasn't seen Exorcist Believer, I wouldn't waste your time. It's not a bad movie by any stretch. It's not bad. It's good in its ways, but its only saving grace is that it's connected to the Exorcist movie, which actually turns out to be its downfall as well. Because for an Exorcist movie, it's just meh.
Um, and just to throw in an example of the opposite, the first Omen,
Yes,
surprisingly great.
like you know it's not going to end well because it's literally telling you how Damien is born.
Mm,
So you know it's not going to end well. But it ends well.
it does.
Like, it's a great ending.
Unexpected ending. Yeah, but it was good. I think everyone was surprised that it's actually good.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil the ending in any way. And I know it retcons a couple of things from the original Omen film, which some fans are a bit upset about.
Mm,
Um, and I don't want to ruin the ending for anyone who hasn't seen it, but they stuck the ending like
yeah,
in a way that I'm like, they did good. They did
yeah.
good.
I think I watched it before you, and I told you like that was surprisingly great. Then you watched it,
Yeah.
like, yeah, yeah, shocking.
And I got to the end. I'm like, I remember texting you going, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I know,
Like,
me either.
legitimately got me.
Like that last maybe 15 minutes of the movie, I was like,
All hell just breaks loose, literally.
yeah, yeah. I thought it got to the point of you know what I'm talking about. Got to a point like, okay, movie's going to end, and it's like there's another 15 minutes where it just goes nuts.
It did. Yeah, and they did it well. So there's a
Yeah,
case of it working. It doesn't happen
yes,
often, but these guys did well.
absolutely. Um, should we just end up on talking? I know we got off track there a little bit, but we should talk about, as we teased at the start, the Pooniverse.
The Pooniverse.
I
Yes.
just want to run you through all the movies that are currently in production in this.
Prepare our audience for the worst.
Yes. So the official name is the Twisted Childhood Universe, or the TCU, where they are essentially just taking public domain stories and giving them a horror twist.
Hmm.
But it's all going to be interconnected. So essentially
Right.
we've had Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2.
Yep.
They're out there. The next one coming up is Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare, which surprisingly is actually, let me check, being written and directed by Scott Jeffrey, who played Christopher Robin in Winnie the Pooh 2.
Ah,
So he's fully on board now.
and that's to be released this year.
That is, yes, coming out this year. It's currently in post-production. Next year we have Bambi the Reckoning.
I'm here for that one.
And Pinocchio Unstrung, which a Pinocchio horror film has the potential to be a really good like body horror type of movie. I really hope they go that
Mm.
way.
They could also go a Child's Play ripoff, which I think they need to
Yeah,
be a bit wary of.
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And then next year also we have Pooniverse Monsters Assemble.
Yep. That
Which
sounds I
I
don't
don't
know how that sounds.
yeah, I don't know either. And then 2026 is scheduled for Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 3. And
Yep.
then two more in development but haven't had dates announced yet is Awakening Sleeping Beauty and Snow White Returns.
Hmm.
Where from, I don't know.
Death, one imagines. No, that was Sleeping Beauty who died.
Maybe no, Snow
No.
White. Snow
Snow
White.
White was the one who died on the
Yeah,
apple,
Sleeping Beauty
wasn't
just
it?
fell asleep.
Now, and I know that Brayton did mention Winnie the Pooh getting his head cleaved in two at the end of the movie.
Yeah,
But that's not even a mid-credit scene, is it really? It's a couple of minutes into the credits, maybe,
yeah,
that it's explained exactly how we can get a a third Winnie the Pooh film. So
Yes, we'll leave that there for you.
hmm. I am wondering what this premise for this Monsters Assemble is supposed to be. Who are
Yeah,
they
I
assembling against?
that's the thing. Are they just I'm reading the Wikipedia entrance, but they haven't really got any details.
I can see they're introducing Rabbit, Sleeping Beauty, and the Mad Hatter to the group. So
Hmm.
that could be interesting.
Yeah, I know it says Peter Pan Neverland's Nightmare is centered around Wendy's search for her brother Michael, who's been kidnapped by Pan.
I mean, you could make the argument that's what the original Peter Pan's about.
Absolutely. And Bambi, I think Bambi is the one that I'm most interested in. I want to
Mm.
know what the heck they're going to do there. But it says that the plot follows a woman named Zaina and her son named Benji, who must fight to survive when they find themselves as prey to a killing machine of a deer following a car wreck. So I'm very interested in how that's gonna go.
Like I said, I'm here for it. I want to see how this plays out.
After the quality turnaround of the second one, I'm fully on board for this whole
It
Monsters universe thing.
I feel like it's gaining traction, and if it gains traction, it will gain money. And if it gains money, but keeps the sense of the second Winnie the Pooh film of we are really just playing with it here.
Yes,
We could get a very interesting dark universe
it
happening.
it definitely needs to stick that tone of yeah, like you said, we're not going to take this too seriously. We
Mm.
know what this is. Let's just give you a good time for 90 minutes.
And hopefully it will.
Fingers crossed. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up. Any final
I think
thoughts?
so.
Oh,
Uh,
I should say, what was your rating for Winnie the Pooh 2 out of 5? You go the first one out of 5.
I would probably go a solid 2.5 to 3.
I would give it a solid 3.
Mm.
3 out of 5 for me. I
It's
enjoyed it.
watchable.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. I'd easily watch it again.
Yeah, I felt like the first movie was a chore. I didn't feel that way with
Hmm.
this one.
No,
Yeah.
I enjoyed my time with the second movie.
Mm,
All right. Time to wrap up, I think. We've been talking
I think so.
a long time. But yeah, email us in if you have some horror movies or think we should check out some horror movies if you have recommendations. And like I said, we've done a couple of different episodes. Eloise and I did our Doctor Who retrospective, which you're not caught up with yet. Are you caught up with the new
The
season yet?
No, no, not yet. It's one of those ones we all have to watch together as a family, and we're never together as a
Ah,
family.
hate those ones.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
Stupid family.
Eloise and I did our Doctor Who retrospective. We just did our Winnie the Pooh retrospective. And
Mm,
yeah, if you like this kind of stuff, let us know and we can definitely do more of it.
yeah, yeah.
Waiting for the day Julian and Eloise do something together. Because
Who's to
I'm in
say
the
we haven't?
oh true, very true. I think you're stuck
Mm.
because I have all the editing stuff.
Yeah, we can't really do this without Brayton.
You could if you really tried. The question
I
is, do you
could,
want
but
to?
I'm a little too lazy to try.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
All right. Well, thank you everyone, and we'll
yeah.
see you next time for whenever and whatever that might be.
Well,
Yep.
until then.
Bye bye.
Bye.